The wind howled across the empty stretch of rural highway, snow sweeping sideways like a white curtain. And long before anyone knew their names, before the town understood what really happened out there, there was only a single choice, one that led to dozens of luxury cars lining an old gravel road days later. But the story didn't start with engines or headlights. It started with a knock. A desperate, trembling knock. Arthur Benson had just settled into his worn recliner, the one his wife, Dorothy, patched every winter, when the sound echoed through the house. It wasn't the kind of knock neighbors used. It carried fear, urgency, and something else, hope, the kind people barely hold on to. Dorothy looked up from the quilt she was folding. Arthur, who would be out in this cold? With a sigh, Arthur pushed himself up and shuffled toward the door, joints aching from years of hard work on fields he no longer owned. Winter hit Louisiana differently these days, unexpected, harsh, bitter. When he opened the door, the icy wind nearly knocked him back, but the sight before him froze him in place. A young couple stood there, shivering violently. The man looked no older than 30, his face pale from cold, his arms wrapped around a bundled-up little girl pressed tightly to his chest. The woman beside him was trembling so badly she could barely keep her hands steady. "Please, we saw your porch light," the young man stammered. "Our car died, my daughter, she's freezing. We didn't know where else to go." Dorothy appeared behind Arthur, her voice warm despite the chill. "Sweet Lord, get them inside, Arthur." They ushered the strangers in without another word. Warmth from the wood-burning stove washed over the family, and the child, a tiny girl with flushed cheeks, let out a weak, exhausted cry. Dorothy immediately knelt beside her, brushing melting snow from the girl's hair. "I'm Dorothy," she said softly. "What's her name, sweetheart?" "Lena," the woman replied, removing her scarf to reveal tear-stained cheeks. "I'm Rachel, this is my husband, Scott. We're so sorry to just show up like this." Arthur shook his head. No one should apologize for trying to keep their family safe. Scott's eyes filled with relief so deep it looked painful. They sat the family near the stove while Dorothy heated broth and warmed blankets in the dryer. Arthur checked outside, finding the small SUV half buried in snow, clearly dead from the temperature drop. Even the hazard lights were fading. When he returned inside, he saw Dorothy helping Lena sip warm broth. The way the little girl clung to the bowl made Arthur's chest tighten. "How long y'all been out there?" he asked gently. "Hours," Scott admitted. "We were driving to my brother's place, heater went out, then the engine." His voice cracked. "We tried to stay in the car, but Lena started falling asleep. I knew we had to move." Dorothy exchanged a quiet, worried glance with Arthur. She recognized the danger. Children didn't get that cold without consequences. "You're staying the night," Dorothy said firmly. "No arguments." Rachel's jaw trembled. "We don't have money, we didn't expect." Dorothy cut her off with a soft smile. "This isn't a hotel. It's a home. And tonight, it's yours." They helped settle the family in the spare room, layering quilts, heating bricks wrapped in towels, checking Lena's breathing, and making sure her tiny fingers regained color. Only after the girl finally drifted into normal, healthy sleep did the three adults step out into the hallway. "You saved her," Rachel whispered. "I don't know what would have happened if." Arthur raised a hand. "You don't owe us anything. Just rest." But the truth was, the Bensons weren't living easy either. Their pension barely covered medicine. Their furnace was old. Their cupboards weren't filled like they used to be. Still, neither of them hesitated, even once, before opening that door. The storm raged through the night, drumming against the house like a warning none of them understood yet. By morning, Lena was sitting at the kitchen table with Dorothy, giggling softly as she tore pieces of warm cornbread. Scott and Rachel looked like they hadn't slept that peacefully in months. "We'll call a tow truck as soon as the roads open," Scott promised. And, we'd like to pay you back for all this. Arthur smiled, the lines on his face deepening. You can pay me back by getting your little girl home safe. That's all I care about. But fate has a strange way of tracking simple kindness. Because while Arthur swept snow off the porch and Dorothy packed leftover biscuits for the road, Scott stared out the window, expression thoughtful. Something about this elderly couple, their generosity despite having so little, didn't just touch him. It stayed with him, deep in a place he couldn't ignore. And days later, when the snow finally melted and life seemed to be returning to normal, the Bensons awoke to something impossible, something that made their quiet gravel driveway shake beneath the rumble of engines. They had no idea yet, as they sipped morning coffee, what waited beyond those curtains. But everything began with that single knock. And everything changed with what was about to happen next. Arthur shuffled toward the window first, mug in hand, expecting maybe the mail truck or the neighbor's old pickup rattling by. But when he pulled the curtain aside, his breath stopped in his chest. Dorothy noticed immediately. What is it, Arthur? You look like you've seen a ghost. Arthur didn't speak, he just stepped aside. Dorothy leaned forward, confused, and then her hand flew to her mouth. Outside, stretching far down their long gravel driveway, were cars, dozens of them. Sleek, polished, shining like they had just rolled out of a showroom. Black SUVs, high-end sedans, even two limousines sat idling quietly, their tinted windows reflecting the morning light. What on earth, Dorothy whispered. Before they had time to process it, the front door knocked again, not desperate this time, but firm and confident. Arthur opened it slowly. Standing there was Scott, dressed in a tailored coat, flanked by two men who looked like security personnel. Behind him stood Rachel holding Lena, all of them smiling. Scott stepped forward. Good morning, Arthur. Arthur blinked. Son, what's all this? We never told you what I do, Scott said gently. Not because we were hiding anything. We just didn't think it mattered. And that night, it really didn't. He took a breath. I'm the founder of a tech company. A pretty big one. We had been driving through to surprise my brother for the holidays, hoping to unplug for a few days. But when that storm hit, he paused, eyes softening. Your home became our miracle. Dorothy's mouth opened slightly. But, all this? Why? Scott looked around at the line of luxury cars, then back at the elderly couple who had saved his daughter. Because kindness like yours can't go unnoticed anymore. Not in this world. Rachel stepped forward, tears already slipping down her cheeks. You saved our child. You took us in when you barely had enough yourselves. We saw the pantry. The blankets. The way you both tried not to show how little you actually had. Dorothy lowered her eyes, embarrassed, but Arthur rested a hand on her back. Scott continued. So we decided to thank you in a way that matches what you gave us, safety, comfort, and hope. He signaled toward the SUV behind him. Please, come outside. Arthur and Dorothy exchanged a look, confused but trusting. They stepped out into the cold, and with the guidance of Scott's security team, they were led around the side of their home. And then both of them froze. Sitting in the driveway was a brand new heated roof cottage. Fully furnished. Fully paid for. Delivered and installed overnight by a team Scott had called the moment he returned home. Their old house stood beside it, but the difference was painful, one sagging, one shining like a promise. Dorothy covered her face with her hands. This can't be real. It is, Scott said softly. We wanted you to live comfortably the rest of your lives. No worries about heat, broken pipes, medical bills, or food. Rachel stepped beside him. There's more. Arthur felt his knees weaken. More. Scott nodded toward the fleet of cars. Every vehicle you see here belongs to investors, partners, and board members. They all heard what you did. Each one came today to contribute to something we're calling the Benson Fund. One by one, the doors opened. Men and women stepped out, dressed in winter coats, holding envelopes, boxes, and electronic tablets. Some nodded respectfully at the elderly couple, others shook their hands sincerely. Dorothy trembled. I don't understand why you do all this. A man stepped forward from the crowd, one of the investors. Because people like you keep hope alive in this country. You opened your home in a storm for strangers. That's not something you can teach. That's something you live. Another investor added, most of us spend our money building companies or chasing success. But today, we wanted to be part of something real. Rachel approached Dorothy and gently placed little Lena in her arms. The child smiled, warm and lively again. She calls you the lady with the magic blankets, Rachel said with a soft laugh. She doesn't understand everything, but she knows she felt safe here. That broke what little restraint Dorothy still had. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged the child. Arthur cleared his throat, voice thick. We never did this for money. We saw a family in trouble. That's all. Scott put a gentle hand on Arthur's shoulder. Exactly. And that's why this is happening. Over the next hour, the Bensons were guided through their new home, a warm living room with leather seating, a fully stocked kitchen, a walk-in shower, medical supplies, a new heating system, and a small reading nook Dorothy instantly fell in love with. In the kitchen, on the counter, was a folder. Arthur opened it and nearly dropped it. Inside were documents confirming the Benson Fund. A trust. Automatic monthly deposits for life. Enough to ensure they would never worry again. Dorothy leaned into Arthur, overwhelmed. I never thought something like this could happen to us. Scott spoke softly behind them. It happened because you made a choice most people wouldn't. You opened your door. You gave us warmth when we had none left. The elderly couple stood in their new living room, sunlight filling the space, surrounded by the very people whose lives they had unknowingly touched. Arthur looked at all of them, voice steady but emotional. If the world had more days like this, and more people willing to help a stranger, maybe we'd all be better off. The crowd nodded. Rachel hugged Dorothy tightly. You changed our lives. So we wanted to change yours. And as the luxury cars slowly rolled away hours later, Arthur and Dorothy stood on their porch, no longer cold, no longer worried, no longer forgotten. That night, they watched the snow fall outside their new home, hand in hand. No longer a small act of kindness, but a legacy. A reminder that even the simplest warmth shared in the darkest hour can spark something extraordinary. Because everything started with a knock. And because kindness always echoes back, louder than anyone ever expects.